Welcome to Linda's Corner. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about helping children overcome learning disabilities. I'm excited to welcome special guest Lois Letchford. Lois is the author of the book Reversed, a memoir and literacy problem solver. She's also the co-founder of Teaching Students with Dyslexia Writing and Reading program. Welcome, Lois. I'm so delighted that you could join with me today.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, it is my privilege. And I am very excited because I have a child with a learning disability. And when we talk about these types of issues and it affects our children, suddenly it becomes very, very important. And I know that you have a personal experience with your son. Would you like to start by sharing that?
Not only my son, me.
Oh, so you understand it from both angles. That probably puts you in a very special position to be able to be of help because you understand it from both sides.
Yes.
That's an advantage that I did not have, which sounds funny to say that it is an advantage, but when you're trying to reach and to be able to assist someone, this gives you a distinct advantage. And it's so important to be able to help kids who struggle. I know with my daughter, struggling with these things affected her feelings of self-worth. Like I'm not as smart, I'm not as good, and that hurt me as a mom to see her, this beautiful, bright, intelligent child, but she struggled with reading and with school. So yes, please teach me.
My son was 7 years old and I gave him too many directions, about getting dressed. And he came downstairs and I checked to see that he had the right things on. And I said, "Oh, you've missed this." And he said to me, "Mummy, you know I'm not very smart."
Oh, ouch.
Yes. So unintentionally, we put these things on our children when we shouldn't do that. Give them the things that they can do, build them up, because they learn, and I learn very quickly, I'm not very smart.
Which is not the case, but so help us to be able to work through how those feelings are natural. It's interesting that as a parent, because not all of my children had the same issues, I did not know that it was an issue until, there were a few things come along. It was just like, why are you struggling with this? I mean, come on, everyone else got it like that. And it took a while to figure out, oh, okay.
You just said it, because that's our mindset. Why are you struggling with this? You're putting it onto the child. What is wrong with you?
Where would you put it? I mean,
that's exactly. Where do you put it? You put it with the teaching.
With the teaching. Okay. Yeah. But the teaching has to be specifically applied to the needs of the student. So it cannot be, it's not universal. It is definitely not one size fits all.
This is when you get my amount of knowledge. You realize that, okay, children learn to read with ease, okay? Like my husband. Doesn't matter what the teacher does, they will pick it up. And what happens is whatever that child has done, it's like a fast internet connection. They've got it. If a teacher makes a mistake, the internet's flipped out for a minute and the child goes, that doesn't connect. Okay, this is what I have to do. The child makes the adjustment to what the teacher's been saying, and that's fine. As you go down the scale of learning, to the 50th and then the 20th and then the first percentile, like my son is, the teacher has to get everything right. Because if they don't, we actually disconnect the internet and the child cannot pick it up. What happens is that every single person on this planet, rare that you can say that, everyone makes the same jumps in reading to become a skilled reader.
The same.
However,
okay,
most of those jumps are unseen. And that's where the problem lies. We expect children to just pick it up because I have taught it, and we don't see the jumps that the child has to make. I have a 16-year-old student came to me after 4 years in a specialised school for learning disabilities. My first question to him after my introduction is, give me a sentence with the word TO. What does he say? He says, I've got 2 lizards the same. Give me a sentence with FOR. I've got 4 grey shark's teeth. What's happened?
He's mixing the homophones where the meaning of the word has 2 different meanings, and he's making the wrong connection.
Why can't this child learn to read?
Well, he thinks he is reading, but what he's reading doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he knows he's not reading, and he's never been taught the difference between TWO and TO and FOR and FOUR. If you don't get taught that, you're expected to pick it up.
Right.
And if you don't just manage to pick it up, then nothing makes sense. Then you put decoding on top, well, nothing makes sense there either. So everything I do is making sure that the child understands how the written language works. Everything. So you start with the first 10 sight words, and you've got words like and, A-N-D. How does and work? Because the other point is, every child I teach speaks English as their native language. They've got the word in their backpack. How do I connect their oral language to what's on paper? And I physically do things. I've got a pencil and paper. I've got shoes and socks. And if I need shoes and socks for my students, I get them and put the word and in the middle and put a symbol above it so that they understand that, oh, I know this word. So my students are always reading, they're always writing, they're always making meaning, always decoding. That's the start of it. And it's that everything I do is foundational. If children have, this problem of not understanding the difference between TO and TW, they're going to struggle with everything else along the way. So that's foundational, understanding the difference between homophones. They must do that. Understanding that pronouns are meaningful. Now, does that make sense to you?
To understand the meaning of pronoun?
Yes.
Yes.
I just had to lean over to get a book because this is what I do with my students. This is the book I use. Can you see it?
No, it's blinking in and out.
Can you see it now?
Something about said the stork.
Yes, perfect. Said the stork. Said the stork. And I'll just read a couple of pages. Make sure I get the picture so you can. There it is. There's the picture of the stork.
Mm-hmm.
And then the words are, said stork, I will eat this egg. He pecked at it, but it would not break. And then you've got the next page. Hippopotamus rolled on it. Lion bit it. Chimp hit it. There's my chimp hitting it.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
And I've got to show you this one. Elephant stamped on it. And I said to some third graders, 8 years old, 9 years old, in school for 3 years, I said, what's the it in this book? And my 3 students said, it is nothing.
It is nothing. So you have to go back to the beginning. And I got lost in trying to look at the pictures, and I can't remember what the it was either.
That's exactly right. And it requires memory, it requires comprehension. And then you go, that's the elephant, that's the hippo. The first page is?
The stork had but I can't see it. What was it?
Stork has an egg. He pecked at the egg.
Okay. The picture I was thinking it was an egg, but I figured once the elephant stepped on it,
yes, and see, the pictures are not coming up clearly either, which makes it even harder.
Right.
Don't you know? Yeah. So, and that when that happened, I was really conscious of the challenge that language creates for our children. And so they expect to see a word and they expect one word, one picture. And it doesn't happen like that. In fact, it's that language is dynamic, which causes the problem. And words that we think have only got 1 or 2 meanings have multiple meanings. And skilled readers do it, unskilled readers really have to work at it. So how do I deal with it? I turn books into plays. So a book like A Har Said Stork, you get an egg and the child becomes the animal. And today now you're a stork and then you're a hippopotamus. What are you doing? It makes meaning out of it. It makes sense of it. Kid remembers it. And I do this from beginning through to the end.
Okay. So act it out and recognize what the meaning is. That way you have a visual feedback of their understanding.
Exactly. And if they don't get it or there's a misinterpretation, then you can say, this is the point where they're losing out. They haven't got this bit.
Interesting.
And, you can use a whole range of books that you turn from a normal book into a play. And then you start to see what they understand and what they don't, and where it's falling down.
That's very clever. Well done.
On my website, I do a lot of work with multiple meanings of words, because a word like block, it's really very easy to decode because it's got a consonant blend, BL, short vowel O, and then your digraph CH. CH? It's LOCK, isn't it? And then I take with my students, I have a block on the table. And I ask them and I have a shoebox, and inside that shoebox will be a lock and a clock and a flock of birds and all these different things. But I ask them to find the block, and then they've got to find the lock, and then unlock the lock so that they're thinking and reading all the time. Then get the sock. Now pick up the sock and block the hole in the box with the sock.
Because you just used a different meaning of the word block.
Exactly. And the whole thing goes on, and the last sentence is always in this lesson, block the doorway. My students will look at the block on the table and they look at the doorway and they look and they don't know what to do.
Oh, okay.
And then and I just keep repeating, block the doorway, until it's, I know what to do. And then someone will come through the door and they'll just move. They didn't block the doorway. Blocking involves more than just standing there. Blocking involves an active interaction. You're not coming in. So language that we think is so simple is far more complex on this very level.
It really is. And when you stop to think about it, it's something as simple as block this and block the doorway, and you're looking at a block. The words are simple, but the meaning, you have to be able to extrapolate what the meaning is from the sentence and the way it's used, and to be able to interpret it. It's actually quite a process that we do, most of us, pretty naturally.
You got it, Linda.
Yay, I can read. I'm so glad.
I've given seminars and I say reading is thinking. And we forget that thinking happens the moment we ask children to read a word. And we never read a single word. And, we never read, even a simple book like this. It's not a simple word. It's in a sentence. And the reader has to extrapolate meaning from that. And often the words on the page don't tell us all that's going on in the mind of the author or the reader.
Right.
And the reader actually brings so much to the words on the paper.
And then when we get books that have more words that don't have those pictures in it, then our mind is supposed to make up the picture that goes with what is going on. So we start with those little picture books where there's that visual cue, but later on, you get to choose what the bird looks like, and you get to choose, so many things. Yes. I've heard the saying of cow one is not cow two, where you're talking about something and someone else is talking about the something. You have a picture in your mind, they have a picture in their mind, and those pictures don't often match up very well. And we think we're communicating, but we're really not.
I have it on my tagline for my email as learning and learning problems dwell in activities and cultural practices and not in the heads of individuals.
Repeat that, would you?
Learning and learning problems dwell in activities and cultural practices
Okay.
and not in the heads of individuals. Well, the first part of that is right, that it belongs in how we teach, and that's where we've got to change. The second part I come to question. Okay, this was the scenario that really drove me to become a reading teacher. My son is in second grade. He's with a reading teacher one-on-one 4 days a week. And my son has just been called the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching.
Ouch.
And the reading teacher is sending him home with the same 2 sentences to learn the sight words, the high frequency words, as she gives every other child in her care. He had the word saw to learn. And the teacher wrote, I saw a cat climb up a tree and I saw a man rob a bank. My son read, I saw a cat. No, he said. And he said, I was a cat. No, I was not a cat. I had a cat. And
Flipping it around. Gotcha.
flipping not only the words, but what else? I saw
The letters.
not only the letters. What do you know about the meaning of the word saw?
It's visual. I saw. I'm not catching what you're trying to point out here.
If you went into Google and you put in the word saw, S-A-W, what would come up?
Probably the first thing that come up would be the tool.
Exactly. The first thing that comes up is the tool. What's coming up in this mind? Either the tool or to cut. And so when the teacher said, I saw a cat, what's he doing?
He's seeing cruelty to animals in his head.
And he's saying, you don't do this. And here's the other problem. The child doesn't have the words to say, this doesn't make any sense to me. You don't cut cats in halves.
Right.
And the teacher's thinking, look, he hasn't got a clue that the word SAW also means to look. He only sees to cut or the object. So he is confused. The sentence the teacher gave him was inadequate. It didn't give the complete meaning of the word saw. And then here's the problem. The children who are on the autism spectrum will see the concrete, they will see the animal being cut or the saw, and they won't know to look for the abstract meaning, which means to look.
Wow. Okay, so what sentence would give the complete meaning of saw? Because that word complete meaning or that statement is pretty broad.
This is how I do it and how I've done it since. I take my time to learn the word saw. The first day I ask my children to go to the internet, type in the word saw, and as you said, what comes up are all of the different types of saws. I get them to download a saw, a picture of a saw. Which one do they like? Which one do they know? And write a sentence on it. This is a chainsaw. This is a hacksaw. This is whatever it is, right? And then we look at another picture, saw the log. And saw the log is something that we may not be doing today. You know, some people chop. Where you are, I don't know. Do you chop? Do you saw? Because it's an old word.
Mm-hmm. You can saw a log.
Yes, that's right. And you saw a branch off a tree. Right. So that's day one. The second day, I take a pen and paper with me and I walk with my students. And I start usually in the library and we talk to the librarian, but we watch the librarian. We watch the librarian stamping books. We watch the librarian putting books back on the shelf. We talk about what we did. We talk to the librarian. Then we walk away and say, we're going to talk about you. We walk away and I shut the door. And I say to my students, we saw the librarian stamping books. We saw the librarian checking out. When is it happening? Now or in the past?
In the past, because you closed the door.
That's right. That's right. And now they know I, as the reader, have to do the thinking, which is the correct meaning. And I don't have to do this once. I have to do it multiple times. We watch the principal, we watch the people in the office, we watch whoever we can. And then when is it happening? Now or in the past? Because then you're coming back to the next component of this is the word saw in the child's oral language? Some children will say, I seed it.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm.
Or I sawed it. You know, they're taking generalizations from the ED and adding it to the word see without recognizing the
because
word
that's in
saw.
irregular past tense. Gotcha.
A lot of this work is done by speech therapists, and it's an overlap between speech therapy and literacy. You've got to have it in the oral language before you come to having it in the written language. Am I blowing your mind?
Well, it's beautiful. And these are things it's like, I wish I'd have known that. I wish I'd have thought about that. Because these things, and I have a grandson right now who's 6 and learning how to read. He has a little bit of autism. And the idea, he loves things that fit a pattern. And he loves to be able to understand the pattern. And when something deviates from the pattern, it bothers him. It makes him upset because, for example, the word saw. I mean, he's just barely learning how to read, but when it doesn't follow the pattern where something is in the past, ends with ed, anything like that, it's just like, oh, makes me mad because it's wrong, and he can see it. So what's wrong with everybody else? You know what I mean?
And that's, that goes back to the head of the individual. What are they seeing as opposed to what is everyone else seeing? And it's really important to relax him, calm him down, and show him how the vast majority of things, particularly when you're learning to read, are a pattern. They are a pattern.
Right. That's why we learn them as a pattern.
Yes, an ED is a pattern. Pattern. Nicholas was brilliant at patterns. My son Nicholas was brilliant. And that's the thing that got him to survive, really, was his pattern recognition. So, how's your grandson doing now?
Right now, I mean, he's terrific. He's just a little boy. He's just getting started. So,
yeah, I do so much work on making meaning out of things all the time, because meaning is what goes into memory. And as Nicholas has got older, I've been able to look back and ask him what he remembers. And it's just been fascinating to see what was so important to him. And we ignore so much of how children learn when it comes to teaching reading. We think we have to teach decoding, and that's all we have to do. Well, you're right. Yes, we do have to teach decoding, but we have to teach it in a way that makes sense to the child. It's not about me, the teacher. And that's quite a different switch. Is the child learning what we are teaching? Or are we just going on with it?
I really like the way that you do that analysis through the acting things out, because where I am, I'm in the United States, I'm in the Intermountain West, and what they do, because that concept of I have to know what the children are learning, I have to know what the children are getting, and it's very important, but the way that they do it is through tests. And sometimes they spend so much time testing that it messes with their chances of learning, and then they get test anxiety, and it just creates a cycle of I don't really like it. So when you're walking through and act this out, you are getting that feedback, and it's a visual feedback, and you're able to understand quite accurately what their level of understanding is. But you didn't make them sit down and write out a test. There was no stress or anxiety, and it didn't create that opportunity for failure.
The moment we introduce stress and anxiety to our children is the moment our children's brain shuts down. And when their brain is shut down, they've got no chance of learning anything.
I agree with you completely.
My son, my Nicholas, his is the story that really drove me, because he had this label, the worst child ever. And that teaching I Saw a Cat really put a fire in my belly to say, this isn't the way you should ever teach. Nicholas goes on to achieve a PhD from Oxford in applied mathematics. And after that, I said to him, I thought, now I can ask him what happened, because he failed first grade. End of first grade, he could read 10 words. He had no strength and a low IQ. And I said, Nicholas, tell me what happened in first grade, thinking he'll be able to explain a bit. My son cried, and not a word emerged from his mouth. He's 30 years old and confident, learned happily for so long, yet the damage done in that first year was still there. Why am I passionate? Because no child should ever have that memory.
Right.
And then I flipped it around, because I couldn't deal with it, and I wasn't experienced. I'm not a psychologist, and I didn't want to even think about it then. That I said to him, Nicholas, tell me when you and I learned together. And it was like, oh, new world. He said, I remember the poems we wrote, and he's laughing. And he named the poems. We did A Mug of a Bug, and we did Windmill on a Hill, and we did The Cat in the Hat. He named them. And he said, and, learning about Captain Cook. We learned about Captain Cook when he was 7. He said, that changed my life. I loved learning. I learned that I love learning, and I never want to stop learning. And then he started to giggle like the 7-year-old.
Really?
And he said, you wrote a poem about the witch's spell. I said, yeah, I did. And he said, and we wrote the witch's ingredients. And I just remember it being so funny. Here he is laughing about something 25 years later over this ridiculous thing. What was interesting to me as a mother, and I wrote the story about it, reversed, a memoir. I didn't write about the witch's spell. I didn't write about the ingredients, because I deemed the poem too poor to put in a book. What I ignored was the long-term impact of the emotional connection of writing that poem, his laughter, his enjoyment. He learned the letters and the sounds of the witch's spell and the spit and spot, spin and spell. But on top of that, he learned that learning was so exciting, and he's never forgotten it.
That is so beautiful. If you can help a child to enjoy the process of learning and make it something that they want to do their whole lives, rather than something that is stressful and a drudgery. Because, we go through our school years, we go through our primary education and our high school, and not everyone goes to college, but those of us who go to college, we do that. But there is a point where the schooling ends. But there doesn't ever have to be a time that our learning ends. So if we have lost the ability and the enjoyment in learning, then we miss out on a lifetime of opportunity.
Mm-hmm. 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 I have come to realize that mindset plays a huge part in how we see children, how we teach children. When my son was in first grade and he can't do anything, they write academic papers about children like him. He failed first grade. He can't do anything. So what? It doesn't matter what we do. The kid's not going to learn anyway. That's the mindset. When I taught him, my child must learn to read. End of story. I don't care how we do it. He's going to learn to read. Mm-hmm. And then we had a lot of fun along the way, which was unbelievable. But the fact that the school could say he doesn't matter because we've had this IQ test that said he can't do it is horrendous. And it
Sorry
often
that happened. That is, no child should have to feel that way. And as a mother of a child, that's devastating as well.
And knowing that he's capable, now 20 years later, seeing that he's capable of a PhD in applied mathematics, it's the same child. So when I teach children who struggle, I say, you're not a struggling child. You're a future rocket scientist.
That is beautiful. That's an excellent beginning.
Yeah.
That is beautiful.
Switch our mindset before we start, and then we'll change the way we teach.
That is beautiful. And it took excuse me, an experience like that, like you had, to be able to recognize that there was a problem in the teaching because, like you said, it worked for the others
Yes.
because the other kids were able to fill in the pieces that were missing. So that's
But
fascinating.
he couldn't. He couldn't. He couldn't fill in the pieces, which mean the teachers have to fill in the pieces. But when the teachers are giving you a standardized sentence that, if I get a bit upset about I saw a cat climb up a tree because there were no cats climbing up any of our trees where we lived.
Oh, really? So the kid had never even seen a cat climbing a tree.
And that's right. That's exactly right.
Oh, you know what? That adds a whole new dimension because I have a cat and my cat's always climbing a tree. So my kids would definitely have seen that scenario. So if you have never seen it,
Seen it.
then the only saw you'd be thinking of, oh, wow. Okay,
And
okay. That's
worse,
another piece of the
worse,
puzzle to me.
worse than that was that our family had spent 6 months in another country. And we'd been over to England for 6 months with my husband. And so every weekend, every day we're seeing something new. And if you know England, it's a little place where you see so much and you see so much history. So we'd seen Windsor Castle and a Gutenberg Bible and original maps of Captain Cook. But the teacher didn't even use any of Nicholas's experiences to write the sentence. She wrote this abstract sentence: I saw a cat climb up a tree. And I'll ask you, have you seen a man rob a bank?
No, fortunately. And I hope never to be part of that. You know?
So, and because of my son, I went back and became a reading specialist. And during my studies, I found this paper and it was titled Beyond the Deficit Theory. And it was published before my son went to school. And it said, when children fail to learn to read, we blame the child. We say, well, look at their IQ. Well, look at their home background. Well, look at this, look at that, look at the other. And what we fail to do is fail to look at how we're teaching the child. And that's the academic paper that I live.
Mm. Wow. And it's very interesting and challenging. As I have many friends who are teachers, and I've been a teacher, math, but to be able to, when you have a classroom full of students and there are so many needs, and their needs are beyond academics, um,
Yes.
it's incredibly challenging to be able to meet the needs of all of the kids. But when you're talking about these experiential things, your objects in a box and acting it out, that is something that could be used for every child. And so it wouldn't be, well, this is what we need for the special needs kids, and the other kids, we can do this. Everyone could learn that way. It seems like a little bit slow in it starting, but that creates a foundation of understanding. Sometimes I think we think that learning is just this perfect incline that just is consistent. And my experience of watching kids learn, it doesn't go that way. Sometimes it's like this, and sometimes there's a leap, and sometimes, so that's just food for thought. So thank you for this conversation. Thank you for your experience. Thank you for loving your son enough to figure it out. And so you can use that information to be able to help other kids who are struggling. So beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Linda, you said it, if we use this with all our children early on, everyone gains. And what you notice is the smart kids actually help the lower ones. They just pick it up quicker. And you just do it more often and the fact that the ones who are picking it up quickly with good language skills help the ones that are slower. But everyone gains.
Mm,
Everyone gains.
I'm clapping for you. Thank you. That is beautiful. Okay. Well, in closing, I'd like to share a quote by French playwright, actor, and poet Molière. He said, The greater the obstacle, the more glory in overcoming it. Today, I invite you to do one thing to work towards overcoming your obstacles so you can gain the glory you deserve. See you next time on Linda's Corner.